Hey, welcome back again, folks, to the Profitable Sheep and Goat Production Podcast. My name's Leon Gaiman, and I'm here with Lost Creek Wholesale. And again, I have my friend Matt Nault from Glenbrook Farms on again today. We have a special guest, Jack Knox from Ettrick Kennels in Missouri, and he's a Border Collie trainer, and we're excited to get him on today and see what we can learn about training Border Collies and his maybe a little bit about his history of how he got into Border Collies. So happy to have you here today, Jack.
Well, happy to be here.
So Jack, to get started, how about if you could give us a little bit of history and how you and Border Collies got started?
Well, I grew up in the borders of Scotland and was on a farm more or less all my life. And I just grew up always wanting to be a shepherd. When I was a little boy, that was my dream. And when I was 16, I left home and went away as a young shepherd. And I went up to Ettrick Valley and I spent about 16 or 17 years up there, just shepherding and learning the trade. And it just through all that, I got into, well, of course, I always was interested in dogs and training, and I didn't go to trials or anything, and I just trained dogs, sold a few, and eventually I used to go and watch a lot of trials, and then I started trying it out, and never thought it would do what it did, but that's what brought me to America eventually in I come over in 71. I came to North Carolina, and it was all through chance. I had no intention of going abroad, and there was an American over buying dogs, actually, and he came to look at my dogs, and they didn't buy anything, and he was standing outside the house, and he said something about it was a beautiful place to stay, and I said, yeah, it's a pity I have to give it up next year. And he had left, and about 2 weeks later, I was at a trial, and he came up to me and said, you was having to give up your position. You wouldn't be interested in going to America. And I said, shoot, no, me, no, my wildest dreams. And he went on, and I said, look, I'm not even interested. And he finally said, well, if you don't mind, I'll take your name and address. We've made some inquiries. So a friend wants a Scotsman to come out, and he said, he's a big ranch and you get the chance to run it. And he said, it might be a great opportunity. And I said, well, I appreciate it, but I'm not really interested. Well, he says, let's negotiate and see what happens. So started negotiating, and I thought, if I don't do it, I'm going to regret it all my life. So that's how I landed in America.
So in hindsight, was it a good move or a bad move?
Yeah. It's all been like a fairy tale, to be honest. I mean, and since all of that happened, I would never have dreamt it happening the way it has. And since I come to America, it's just continued.
Yeah.
I came to America. I came to North Carolina, just outside of Winston-Salem. It was the next state senator who worked for Fred Banson. They had a big ranch there. It was kind of model place. It was not a lot of livestock on it, and I got there and increased the livestock and lots of changes during that time, And I was there about 3 years, and then I had met a guy. I was in Delaware at a trial once, and there was a guy there from Wisconsin. Didn't know him, but just came and talked to me about my dogs, and little did I know he'd taken a bunch of pictures, and I see about 2 weeks later, I got these pictures in the mail, and I wrote and thanked him for the pictures, and we just became good friends, and I ended up selling him a dog, and when I left, I was thinking of going back to Scotland, actually, but when I left there, he offered me a partnership in his place, and I flew up there and looked at the place, and that's when I kind of got started on my own.
And you started a kennel up there, is that correct?
Well, to start with, I was in the partnership, and I had already dogs and things, but Well, I was there about a year and a half, and the dogs was just carrying the farm, you know, and I said to the guy, and he says, "Well, I don't want to lose you. If you want, I'll lease you the farm." So he leased me the farm. Uh, that would be in 75, I guess. And I went home to Scotland, bought myself a few dogs, not what I wanted, but as good as I could afford. And started Ettrick Kennels. Uh,
So did you do something there on that farm other than just the trained dogs? You must have had some livestock or something.
yeah, we ran. Well, he had sheep on the place. Actually, the guy's name was Larry Reef. He used to be photographer, head photographer for Chicago Tribune. So he traveled a lot, had a lot of advertisement and thing. He retired up there and bought that farm, and he had sheep on it, but they weren't very good when I went. And I started improving the flock, and you know, I worked for equity, buying lawns and things as a sideline, and so if I've seen anything at the market was decent, I just put it together and ended up putting about 300 ewes we used to run. So that's kind of how I made it living, and then I started doing a little bit of trialing, and it was pretty successful.
Mhm. What's for so most of our listeners are sheep and goat producers, not as into the dog world, other than that, you know, some of us might use dogs for herding our sheep. Um, a lot of us would like to use dogs for herding our sheep, but I'm curious with the, you know, you start a kennel, um, obviously to make a business out of it, you're either selling puppies or maybe you're training dogs for other people. What's that side of the business look like?
Well, I think I did a little bit of everything. I trained dogs like that before I even left Scotland and sold them, but mainly work dogs, just people, farmers and people that needed them. Um, Sheepdogs, even since I came to the United States, it's just amazing how it's changed. I mean, I would say at that time there might have been 11 or 12 trials a year, and now you get that in a month.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's all over, and it's snowballing, and it's getting into ranching. There are more ranchers buying dogs. Dog prices is went crazy, all because of that, and so when I started, it was you had the sheep for the dogs. I mean, when I started working, I wasn't allowed to go out and train my dog. I would have been paid off if they'd seen me out training dogs. But nowadays, it's all about training dogs because the dogs is out than the sheep. A lot of people keep small flocks of sheep for the dogs nowadays,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a complete turnaround. But for me, I'm still into the work dog. I mean, if my dog's not good enough to do my work, I don't want to run it. I don't want to. I'm not a big competitive person, really. I mean, if I go, I try to win, but I don't. It doesn't drive me to compete.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more into it because I enjoy it. I enjoy the livestock, and I like to see livestock handled the right way. Um, I think the competition side is changing to, suit competition and suit people. It watches rather than handling livestock and taking care of what we should. And as a result, for me personally, it's it it's taken the whole part away that I enjoyed as much.
Hmm.
I'm not complaining. I mean, if it hadn't been for trial something, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there is a difference there, like you said, on whether you're working sheep to get a job done or you're trialing. I mean, it's just by nature, it is different. How have the trials changed maybe? And maybe it's just a matter of they've gotten more competitive. It's got, like you said, more about the trowel, not as much about the just handling the livestock.
Well, I think it's much the same as everyday life. Life has changed in that time, you know, and people do different things today than they used to do. I mean, little simple things was enjoyment way back when I was growing up, whereas nowadays people never think about it. You've got to do something special to be.
Mhm.
And I think if I look at the livestock industry, that's what I see. Um, Growing up as a kid and a young guy that started out, I was taught about sheep, for example, um, what to look for in a sheep. You know, it wasn't about the money, it wasn't about the profit, it was about you raise the animal so it would leave you a profit. So
Mhm.
your wool, for one thing. At one time, the wool and the sheep used to pay the rent of the farm.
Sure.
That's what people figured on their wool. Now you can't give it away. You know, it's just it's a burden nowadays, to be honest. But uh, so the wool was very important, and in these days, when we were selecting a ram or buying a sheep or buying sheep, we would always look at the wool, make sure it would shed the water. That was the main thing. He wanted a tight fleece that would shed water because you didn't want that water going to the skin. You used to look at the hair on the face, and if it wasn't lying the right way, it wouldn't be a good milker.
Yeah.
You never hear of these things nowadays. There's a lot of things, you know, that's old fashioned, but they worked.
Yeah. Yeah. How were you using your dogs? I guess let's before we go into the dog training more, which I want to do, and I want to talk about your book, but let's talk about sheep a little bit. How you were managing your sheep at that time and using the dogs in that context, because I'm assuming you were, pretty out on pasture, lambing on pasture, and then using the dogs to herd them out there.
Well, I think that the biggest difference, it's a little bit different back home in the sheep industry,
Mm.
but like what I did mainly as a shepherd was what they called a hill shepherd, which was on the hills. So all these sheep running the hills, and well, to give you an idea, the farm I was on when I left had about 1,200 acres on it, and we ran about 1,000 head of sheep. There was 200 in the fields and about 800 on the hill, and about 40 cows, and I was in charge of all that at that time, you know. But on the hill, these sheep run in what we call hefts. So a heft is a part of the hill you might run from the bottom up onto the top, you know. And the idea of the hefts, there were no fences or anything. These sheep just stayed on their own ground.
Yeah.
And I could go out and whistle that he just saw them all shed, just move to their own ground. We trained them but with the sheepdogs to stay on their own land.
Gotcha.
So, and a lot of even your neighbors, there was no march fences. It was just all open. But
Mm.
if sheep went across, it would chase them back, and before you know it, then they very seldom cross. And if they had either, they would go to their own. So it's completely different
Yeah.
to what it used to be, you know. That
They
there was a maybe 150 sheep that would be on one side of the mountain, and on across say across the creek. On the other side, there would be another 150 would go the opposite way.
Mm.
And each shepherd, he turned them out at night, go around the bottoms and turn them out. And then in the mornings, he'd go around the top and turn them in.
Yeah.
And the idea was, you know, as he'd done all that, um, anything that was weak or wrong or had problems would hang back, and he would. But these sheep, the idea was to graze their way out in the evening and graze their way in the morning. He didn't want to chase them in. But sometimes if you'd had a shepherd say that hadn't shepherded them right, they would get lazy, and sheep would just go and eat and let staying in certain beds. So we would try to train these to be on the move so as that they were getting the grass as it was growing, you know.
Mhm.
So it was different. I mean,
How were you managing? You talked about having about 300 ewes there in Wisconsin. How were you managing those ewes?
well, these were in pastures. When I went to Wisconsin, the owner had a huge pole barn. It was open on all sides, but it was a big pole barn for the sheep to go in under if it was wet or rain, and it was the coldest place on the farm. And the first thing I did was turn them back into the woods and stop using the barn, and it was really, way better. You know, going back to Mother Nature and where there was shelter, because that barn, it just used to draw the cold and the damp and everything in through it, the coldest place on the farm.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's interesting. And then you were probably lambing on pasture in the
yeah,
springtime.
we lamb on the pasture, and sometimes, you know, if it was early or cold, we would put them in. But I did a lot of barn pasture inside lambing in back home in Scotland, and you know, when we back then, and we used to build a lambing shed out of straw and just put the gates up, and then he put straw for a roof on top of the. It was just like an outside deal, and then he'd set up there at nights. We would lamb maybe 700-800 ewes at a time, and he would check them every 2 hours with an old tiller lamp. No electricity, no nothing, you know.
Yeah.
Eh, Quite a big change.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk about training dogs. So, usually I guess you would do this at the end of the podcast, but uh you wrote a book, learning life's lessons with stock dogs. I got it and I read it. I really enjoyed it. So for our listeners, I would, if you want to learn more about training dogs or even just sheep and farm life in general, it's a great book, a great resource. It's not just a how-to manual. It's more of a telling stories that allow you to learn how to train your dogs. Is that, would you agree with that, Jack? Or what was
Yeah, I would agree. You know, when I got into training dogs, it was always an interest of mine, and I just always was interested in it. And um, I used to think I was quite good, and nowadays I look back and think I knew nothing about it. So the best training you get is if you watch your dog. Most people want to make the dogs do something. Nowadays, all I want to do is give them freedom to be wrong, correct the wrong, the right will come.
Yeah.
And a lot of big trainers never give the dogs these chances, but dogs have taught me over the years they can give you far more than you can ever make. It's much the same as a sheep. If you're going to handle sheep with dogs, you better have them trained right. And that's the problem for a lot of people. They want sheep from A to B, but it's how you take them from A to B, how you handle them.
Yeah.
So the dog has to be doing it in the right manner.
Yeah. So I think that what you said about giving the dog a chance to be wrong, I really like that training method. And but can you give us kind of an example of what that would look like? Maybe if you're starting a young pup that kind of has the idea, just give us a little bit of an example, and if you could, on that to help us um understand that.
Well, I think I would start off first with the pup itself. People get a puppy and they're already thinking they have to do this, that, and the next thing with it, and spoiling it, and uh, And don't get me wrong, mate, there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, a puppy, I want to give it freedom.
Mhm.
So what is freedom to a puppy? Let it do what it wants. Teach it from day one, when you start, to respect. And for me, respect is everything in life. It doesn't matter what we do. So if I'm looking to buy a dog, I want it, and it's no right. The first thing I'll be doing is getting its respect so that I can help it.
Mm.
You know, when you're making dogs, you're not always finding respect, you're making answers. But when a dog respects you, it'll give you an answer. So when I'm raising my pup, see it was chewing on my shoelace or something, I'm going to correct it. How would I correct it? I would instruct it. And if it didn't listen, I might just bend down and nip a chair and it'll go out. So the next time it chews on your shoelace and you say, hey, it'll look up and say, what?
Yeah.
Get that dog asking you questions rather than making the dog have answers.
Yeah.
That's the whole method I use in my training nowadays compared to what I used to. And I never did that at one time, but it's all what the dogs have taught me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a very good analogy, and I like how you're pointing out, like, this is not just the first time you take it out with the sheep. This is starting from a puppy. You're teaching that dog right away to respect you and to listen to you. Um, and then the same way when you're going out with the sheep, you're kind of letting that dog express its instincts and
Yeah.
then telling him when he's wrong. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in that, see, for viewers and people that's listening is, you know, people get a puppy and it's never wrong. And if it is wrong, they'll say it's just a puppy. They don't understand that that puppy can learn at a very young age.
Yeah. I think we lost him.
We did.
Yeah, it just dropped off. He must have hit something.
He should be able just to join right by clicking back on that link again.
Like
There he's back.
Okay, but
All right, you dropped out there. That's fine. Or where were we? Tell me that again, Jack. You
Yeah,
said when the
what
puppy's chewing on the shoelace
okay,
and you scold him, then the next time he's chewing on it, you just say, "Hey," and he looks at you and says, "What?" Isn't that what you
yeah.
said? I like that.
Well, when you get a puppy looking at you, it starts to respect you. When you get a puppy playing with you, it's no respecting you at all.
Mhm.
It's just having fun. So I'm a huge believer in any animal that the mind works, the body it tells it everything. So your puppy, I want it thinking. I like a puppy to look at me, think. I don't want it looking at me when it's working. But then when its instincts take over later, when they jump in and that pup starts to feel instinct and starts to eye the stalk and the body carriage changes, you know, that's when the pup will stop looking at you, but he'll listen to you.
Mhm.
So you want to build that in from a puppy up. Like my puppies are more like old dogs when I take them out to sheep. I can take my puppy out with my old dogs and they're not going to go and chase the sheep or no listen or that's all trained. That's all they've got all that from day one. And I don't make it. It's just I let them grow up. I give them freedom and correct their wrongs.
Mhm. You said something in your book that really stood out to me and has really helped me in training my dogs. And that was something along the line of if you're working with a dog that's not necessarily listening to you too well, you just watch for the indication, like the change in his um I was trying to tell Leon about this and I couldn't quite explain it like you do, but you're not necessarily, if you're working with maybe a pup that was allowed to run and just do whatever he wants to. You're not demanding that as soon as you say, "Hey," he, like, stops and pays attention to you. You're taking the little bit of acknowledgement he gives you as a positive and working from that. Am I saying that right? Or
Yeah, I'm getting exactly what you're saying. To me, when a puppy or a dog does something like that, the first thing I ask myself nowadays is, why does it do it?
yeah.
Whereas most people would go to making it not do it. So if you can see why it's not doing it, make that difficult, and that pup changes, that'll all turn around. So like at my clinics, for example, say you brought a dog to a clinic and it wasn't listening. I mean, it was just running over the top of you. The first thing I would do would be, why? I might say, put it on its leash, and I might just scare it a little bit, not much. I'd get it. You see, when a puppy gets scared or a dog gets scared, to think.
Mhm.
But then you have to realize that, and as you realize that, you have to give. It's a change from freedom to correction.
Mhm.
A lot of people, they'll see that and they'll never learn pulling on the leash after.
Mhm.
Well, that's not going to work. It's the freedom behind the correction. It works. It's not the correction.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's freedom to think, use the mind, and the mind will open a lot up.
Yeah. Yeah. I have
There's a story in the book. You would read it. It was about a dog. He taught me all this. And it was a friend of mine in Virginia who used to room with me when I went and did the clinics. And he was sitting one night before the clinic and he made a statement. He said, I was going to play a prank on you tomorrow. You're always playing one on us. I said, what's that prank? Frank Offutt was his name. He was from Stanton. He said, well, I've got this dog and it says all it wants to do is kill a sheep. And I said, it can't be that bad. He says, I'm telling you, if it could reach you, it would kill it at your feet. And I have no idea why I said this, but I just said, I'll tell you what to do, Frank. Bring that dog to the clinic tomorrow, but don't tell a soul. Don't tell this story. So he brought it, and I worked about 5 or 6 dogs in a ring. And that dog was just frantic outside. He just got this about frosting at the mouth, and it had it on a chain about 5 feet long all around his wrist. And anyway, took it in the ring. He took it in the ring, and I said, explain to these people what you told me last night. And Frank says, well, this dog's a little bit aggressive. I said, no, that's not what you told me. You said this dog's a killer. And I played it up a little bit. And sure enough, I mean, if you could have that dog and if he was 2 feet away from you and could reach a sheep, he would grab it, he'd sit down and just pull it to the ground and he would have killed it. And if he'd taken your stick and hit him on the head, he would let go. No hit him, but touch him or whatever. And I watched this, and I maybe did it 2 minutes, and I said, give him to me. And I took that dog, and I had him about 3 minutes, and I was just about to quit him, and I couldn't get nothing going. And I don't know, I was working in the ring, and he went to make a move, and I said something, and I seen something. And I just bent down, and I caught the chain and the leash, and I threw it out of the ring, and I said to people, I don't need this. And that was on a Friday morning. And on a Friday afternoon, he was rough but better. Saturday morning, a little bit better. And Saturday evening, I said, I'll run this dog outside tomorrow. And I was sending him 150 yards. He was stopping. He was bringing his sheep up. And that's the dog that taught me all that. It was like the man up above wanted that to happen for me to learn.
so what was going on with that dog?
I think it was just a fight.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you get two people angry, neither one wants to give in.
Hmm.
And they just get angrier. And I think dogs is like that. With some dogs, it's just fight with each other.
Mhm.
The same thing, It's like a jealousy and and whenever they see each other, they're hungry, and it's who's going to win.
Yeah.
And to me, the winner is the one that gives. So how do you get them to give? And that dog taught me how to get them to give. Whenever I threw that cheating thing out, that dog started to change.
Yeah.
But as he changed, I changed. That's the secret. You've got to change with your dog. If you start wanting to be the boss, and that dog might come up wanting to be the boss too.
Yes.
So it's a fight, and you have to decide whether you want to win or whether you want to lose and get freedom.
Yeah.
But for me, the freedom side is the big thing.
Yeah, I do you think that was some of what was going on with that dog was every time he had a lot of drive, obviously, and he was desperate to work sheep. So every time he'd get close to a sheep, he'd lose his head and just fly in and grab the sheep, and then he'd get pulled off.
Yeah, he would just go crazy.
Yeah, so he never got
Well, no question.
yeah.
He never got his itch scratched.
Yeah. Now, but, that dog went on to be a trial dog, and he was going to be put down.
Wow.
So I say that all the time now at clinics, with people bring in dogs like that, and it's not that you want to fight with them, you just have to find a way to get them to want to listen. And sometimes I'll never even touch them,
Mhm.
but I'll find a way to correct them that they know I mean it. It's what you mean. It's not what you say to your dog that counts, it's how you say it. The tone of your voice and the message that comes through that tone is crucial.
Mhm.
So if you've been back with sheep on the hills, if I had this shouted in a certain tone, you'd have saw these sheep start to gather. So it was the same thing. Animals is a lot smarter than we think.
I want to talk about that a little bit because when I started out training dogs, I was told that you don't want to have any emotion in your commands. You just want to give clear-cut commands. I was told that actually whistles are better than commands because there's no emotion in it. And I I don't know that I agree with that. And then reading your book, you talked about that too. Like that it's okay for the dog to know, like, no, I'm disappointed in what you're doing. Is that, am I understanding that right?
Yeah, I think you'll understand it 100%. And I'm no saying that other training is different, but I've done that other side, and there's no question in my mind that I can change a dog now that I would never have been able to change, and it would always have been a fight. And there's no need of that fight.
Yeah.
That's my philosophy on it. I think it's
So,
freedom, freedom on both sides. Whenever you take away freedom, you cause pressure. So if you took the like to handle livestock right, or sheep right, or cattle right, anything, it's contact. There's a contact spot, and it's all through a dog's eye, and he makes contact. Now, some of these dogs, the eye will lock, and it's hard to move them, and other dogs are looser eyed. But what works the eye? The mind.
mhm.
We're all back to the mind. The mind tells the body what to do. So then I read the dog and try to figure out what's causing the problem, and then pass it on with it.
Well, and I think the difference in that way of training is if you're training a dog to just take clear-cut commands, then you have to always be giving him those commands.
Yeah.
Where if we're a rancher or a farmer out working our stock, we'd much rather the dog knows what we're doing and does his part, and we don't have to tell him
Yeah.
what to do. And I think that's the difference, that you're going to end up with those two training techniques is with yours, you're allowing him to think, and then that allow these dogs are smart. I mean, they pick up on what we're doing pretty quick. So then you have the benefit of I don't have to give this dog commands on how to work the sheep. I just have to give him enough commands that he knows what the job is we're doing today.
I would agree with that 100%, and that's the difference. When he asked at the start, about trialing today and trialing long ago. I mean, most people that trialed long when I first started was shepherds or farmers, and they needed their dogs for everyday work. That was the important part, and the idea of the trial was just to go and compete and help maybe how to get better dogs, breed better dogs and better work dogs. But today it's about people have taken it over. It's about us, not about the dogs as much as, there's a lot of people who wouldn't go and watch a dog trial.
Yeah.
And it's simply because they're not competing. I've watched hundreds, and I could go and watch 100 more. I enjoy it. I enjoy watching somebody else run a dog. Because you learn something. You'll learn if you like it or you don't like it, and that's again back to the mind. It's all about the mind and what the mind's thinking, and never be scared to be wrong would be my motto.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very good. So a couple things from your book. One thing I thought we should talk about was your dog Glenn. That it took you a while. It took him, if I remember right, it took a while before he even showed any interest in working.
He was about a year and a half old actually, and he never even looked at sheep. And that dog was at sheep every day with me, but he didn't never paid any attention. And there was one day I was working in the pens. I don't remember what I was doing, but I had sheep in the pens. And I just happened to glance and I saw him watch his eye just catching these sheep. And I went up to the gate and I let about 3 or 4 out and he just went round them. And that was how it started.
Yeah.
And that dog, within 3 months, you wouldn't have known him.
I think that's an important story because that's one of my biggest challenges is getting those dogs started. And I think some of it is mistakes that I'm making with them as puppies that as puppies we're out feeding the sheep, whatever, they're going along the fence, biting at the sheep as they're trying to eat. And I'm like, no. So then once I once I want them to work, that's my biggest challenge to get them started. But sometimes like with this dog Glenn, it just sometimes just takes him a while to learn or to get started.
They're all different, I can remember old timers when I was growing up saying that, we're in too big a hurry nowadays with everything. But they would say, the dog gets later in starting, they'll turn the best one in the end sometimes. I don't know if that was just an old saying but I can remember hearing it. And another thing I always remember growing up, he was always told he'd never take a dog to sheep without a down.
Hmm.
And it always bothered me that.
Mhm.
And when I did my first clinic, I had never worked in a ring before, but the lady had it was just slow fence, and she had about 50 feet, 2 rings in the field, and I worked in the ring. And that's where a lot of these clues started, because when you're in a ring, you're never off a pressure point. You're only on the movement, off pressure or a movement. Even my finger, I mean, if I take my finger away, that dog would feel it.
Mhm.
So, it's funny how little things like that comes into dog training that I would never have learned if I hadn't maybe did that clinic.
Mhm. So you're saying you won't start a dog without a down on him?
No, that was the old saying.
That was the old saying, because
Yeah.
you will start
I
it.
never understood it, because
Yeah.
how do we want to down on something before it starts? Well, the answer was simple: control.
Yeah.
We were
Right.
control freaks. We want to control everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm one now. I'm not a control freak. I want my dog to be free to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There are
Yeah.
very few people who want their dogs to be free to be wrong. But dogs, for me nowadays, and I'm only talking for myself,
Sure.
I want to teach people, and I know it works. I've done enough of it. I know it works. Unbelievable.
Yep.
I just had a clinic here not maybe 2 weeks ago, and there was a person here with a dog, and it was pretty grippy. It was well trained, but it was grippy if it got a chance. And I took it in the barn the second day, and I just got it to grip and started talking to it and taught it how not to. And the change in that dog, well, the people that was at the clinic all said, "Look at that dog. It's lying at his feet." And all it got from me was corrections.
Mm-hmm.
But the corrections was right. So the respect comes, you see, and I want to be with you and I want to give to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's all in the mind. It's not in what we do as much as in the mind, you know. Read the mind of the dog, read the mind of the stock. It's a going to fun if you could read the sheep, you know how to move that dog. But if you move the dog and try to make the sheep will try to look for the hole and try to get away.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Backing up to your point there on not having a down on a dog,
yeah.
I know I have told people even that before you start working with your dog, you have to have some kind of handle on him, and that a good down command was a good thing. But looking back over, I have not trained very many dogs. Only about, I think I'm working on my fourth one now.
Yeah.
So so I don't feel like I have a lot of experience, but looking back, me putting a down on a dog before we took him to sheep, it actually worked against me, I think.
Well, I would say when you put it down on a dog, he can't do nothing.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what would happen. So
I want the dog being wrong when I correct. I don't want to make the answer. But we are grown into more and more who want to make our answers where I think they can give us answers.
Mm-hmm.
gotcha. But I think also it can make you want that dog to be fluid, and I made some dogs get pretty sticky
Yeah. Yeah. And
with that down.
you have to read your dog when they're young. You know, they're all different. There's some dogs, if I see a weakness in a dog, I'm not going to be trying to make that part come right too quick. I'm going to give the dog confidence to use what he's got.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes in training, we're in such a rush. We train to get the answer, but we don't get the. One of the things for me, it's crucial when I'm working dogs is contact. I hate working a dog if he's no got right contact. And contact is just a pressure point. It's kind of like a bubble on a level, you know. If that pressure point's right, that the livestock's feeling it, the dog's feeling it, and you should be feeling the two of them. So you've got a point to work off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's really pretty easy to get a stop on a dog well after the dog is, going around the flock and stuff. I just am working with a pup right now, and I guess I'm a little slow at catching on.
Yeah.
But, I find myself using my body language more and more,
Yeah.
like to put the dog where I want it, and even to stop the dog. I mean, this is a pup that doesn't have a lie down command, but you can stop the dog if you have
So
to.
you would be using your body the complete opposite way that I would use my body. Because you would be blocking the dog to make it to stop, whereas I'm blocking to let it go to where I want it to go.
Okay, say that again. So
So
I'm
if I wanted
blocking.
when I'm working a dog, I usually want to back away from my dog. I don't want to force my dog to do anything. So, like, if I wanted to go to the right, I would be going the opposite way. I'd be making up.
You'll open the path so that he can, so it makes it easy for him to go the right way.
I make
Yeah.
I make the opening easy, and the other way. And what happens when you do that? You're always in the right position to correct. You take a step to make a dog right, you're not in a position to correct. If you put yourself in a circle, for example, and say you was going to point a dog to go for sheep, and you went opposite way, that fingers should have been out behind you. Like if I wanted a dog to go right, my left hand would be behind me, blocking,
Yeah.
and I'd be backing off, giving freedom to the dog to go the way I want. The only step I'm usually going forward for them training a young dog is to correct,
Yeah.
not to make.
That makes sense. It's yeah.
Until you see it's maybe when you hear it, it maybe doesn't sound right, but it works. I know it does.
I think
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I guess if I use my body to make the dog go the way I want it to,
Mocking
I'm not necessarily blocking it. I guess I see it as making the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard is a saying that I know a lot of horse trainers use. Like if you set it up so that
It's exactly the same thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
you set it up so that so that it's easy for it to go the way you want it to.
You use the mind that he bred. Why did we breed dogs with intelligence and men not allow them to use it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we do. And you know, there's a lot of done, and you know, I'm not saying I'm right, but it's just what I do, and for me, it works.
Well, I think that's what I like so much about your book. It's not a 10-step program, 20-step, 100-step program, whatever, to train your dog. It's the philosophy behind how you allow your dog to learn, which I think is the important thing because then you can work with any dog, not just
Yeah,
certain type of dog.
it's all about. It's not what you do. Why do you do it? And a lot of people don't ask that. They would want to read a book. I get a lot of students come and they want you to tell them exactly how to do that.
Mhm.
And in the process, using my method, instead of looking at the method and thinking themselves, they want to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if we could do it, if we could just hear everything, we would all be perfect.
Yeah.
But you have to think with the hearing, and it's putting it all together that makes the best answer.
Yeah. They want that 10-step program again, and you want to teach them how to learn, how to think.
Yeah, I always tell people if you have a problem with a dog, go backwards. Don't try to go forwards. But they don't want to.
Mm,
They never want to go back. People are in far too big a hurry to get to the end of the project.
mm. Yeah. So, something else from your book that I really wanted to talk about was you talked about training a dog for a turkey operation or maybe a couple dogs for a turkey operation as well as some dogs for a hog operation. I thought that was a really cool story. We used to have some pigs here, and I've had it where the pigs got out and used the dogs to round them up. It's quite fun and entertaining.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think that was, I think people would appreciate, just knowing you can use these dogs for other things. Um, and as I'm thinking about that, maybe I have gotten the question about working goats with a dog. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit too.
Well, the dogs, anything that moves will work. I mean, it's the movement that makes it work. I mean, that's why the dog chases a ball, or you know, but it's how we adjust the work. So, like talking about goats, for example, we used to go and run them goats down in Texas. And I have a lot of people that train dogs and goats. So goats can be handled really easy with a dog. And I remember this was quite a few years ago when I lived in Wisconsin. I did an exhibition at the state fair, and at the end, a bunch of people come up and they were talking and asking questions. And this person said it would do what goats, and I said, "Oh yeah," and they said, "No, it wouldn't." And so anyway, some way they got it arranged to bring goats to the following week to the fairgrounds. And I'll never forget working these goats. They didn't want to move to start with, but I kicked them around the course and put them in a pen. And it's how we do it. It's using pressure at the right time. A lot of people, it's in the dog world today. If you're handling cattle or something, they need to bite. They need this. They need that. I was always taught a good dog doesn't need to bite.
Mm.
In few of these dogs that breed because we're not breeding for the right pressure. We're not breeding. A dog that's biting is not it's usually a cupboard
Yeah.
at the bottom.
So I'm curious, with when you were working pigs, were your dogs having to bite at all to get them started?
These dogs had never worked pigs in their life. When I went, the pig story was in North Carolina, Elizabeth City, and the guy had 100,000 hogs, and we flew down there, and he was a friend of the guy I worked for, actually. They were in the Senate together, and this guy started a hog business. He had 2 semi-load come in every morning, young pigs, and 2 semi-loaded fat pigs would go out. And when I went, it was like a big racetrack, and off that racetrack was 2 or 3 acre lots. And he says, "What I want you to do is go in a lot so and so, bring them around to the pens, and we'll load them. You don't need to load them." And I said, "Wait a minute, George Wood was his name." I said, I've never worked these hogs with a dog." And I says, "The dogs hasn't." He says, "That's why to try, George. There are plenty of people here. We'll hire for detail." And I went into the first lot, and it was this kind of sandy soil, and they had so much brush in there for shade, and it was about 10 o'clock in the morning, and these hogs were all lying under the shade. And I'm crawling under that brush and trying to get them to move, and they wouldn't move. So I just excited my dogs a little bit and nipped at them a little. And a
Yeah.
pig squeal, and before you know it, they would run.
Yeah.
Within 15 minutes, I come out with 250 hogs.
Yeah.
And that guy came up to me and he says, "Jack, I've seen thousands and thousands of hogs loaded out of here, but I've never seen a lot emptied in my life." And I ended up selling them 2 dogs, and there were 6 men did what these 2 dogs did every morning,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's a true story.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. I think what you said there about the dogs having to nip the pigs a little bit to get them started, that's kinda what I was thinking they would have to do, because a pig's um, not gonna be as scared of a dog as a sheep will. It
Yeah. But the thing about that is you have to get that and then stop it. You
Yeah.
don't wanna keep that up.
Right.
That's where people go wrong, they think the bite is. I always nipped at them just to get them alerted, and as soon as I got that hog's mind working, I started taking control of the dog to let the hog think, and it's
Yeah.
freedom to think all round is the answer. Same as the turkeys. When I did the turkeys that night, we went to load turkeys onto a semi. It was up in Minnesota, and they were all indoors. And I mean, I don't know how many birds was in there, but my dog was scared to death when I went in the door. And we ended it up, we loaded, I don't know how many semis that night. And you had to just use pressure, but the right pressure. Otherwise, turkeys they'll just lie down and
Yeah.
you're not going to go them.
Yeah.
But if you use the right pressure, it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can have pheasants or turkeys or ducks or anything with dogs. But it's knowing the pressure and knowing the contact spot
Yeah.
makes a big difference for me anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's very good. Um, I'm just looking at my notes here, of other things that I wanted to talk about. Oh, you said something in your book. Um, you said praise is nice, but it's not necessary. And I think we've talked about this a little bit about how you want the dog to be thinking, where if he's just playing, he's not really thinking. But let's talk about that a little bit because first, when I read that statement, I kind of disagreed. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized when I'm praising my dog, he's not thinking; he's just happy. Which is, there's maybe a time and place that he needs to be just a little bit happy, but yeah. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
I think where I would go on that one would be what is praise.
Hmm.
That is the big one. If my dog did something right, I might touch him, but I might not say anything. But people can't touch the dog without saying, "Oh, good dog." Good, they've got to go overboard and everything.
Yeah.
So it's allowing a dog to think is good, not telling the dog is good.
Yeah.
And I always go back to my dad on that because, of course, my mum died when I was 2. I never knew her, and my dad raised me, and he was, but he wasn't one that was into a lot of praise. And I always remember, even when I would go to America, he would shake your hand like a gentleman when he met him, but he wouldn't hug you or, and that has stuck with me a lot through life. And especially in the dog thing, because I never remember ever getting a spanking from my dad, but if my dad was unhappy, I was crying. He had such a respect over us, and there was 7 of us kids. And if you stop and think about that in life today, you find a family that it's like that, and you don't find too many.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so for me, praise. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it's not for me. I want my dog to know when I'm happy.
Yeah.
And same the other way around, but the dog will know when I'm happy.
And you want him to know
So it's back to the mind, reading the minds. Praise doesn't make a mind. What praise does is make a mind crazy.
Yeah.
If you get too much praise and too much told you're so good, your head gets bigger and you begin to think you're better than you really are.
Yeah.
That's what praise means to me. And, it's like competing. I've been fortunate enough in competing. I haven't did anything exceptional, but at the same time, I think knowing how to lose is more important than winning the wrong way. And today in the world, it's about winning at any cost, whether it's dogs or anything else. It's you've got to win.
I think where I really disagreed with you originally was when we brought it to the human side of praise. Um, but as I thought about it more, exactly what you're saying. If somebody praises you, you're not learning necessarily. You're just, oh, your head's getting bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if if the praise is and if the praise is misguided for something you shouldn't be praised, now you're starting to think, well, you're really something. You really have this figured out when you don't actually.
Yeah.
On the other hand, knowing you're right, knowing you're doing the right thing is much more helpful, because it encourages you to keep doing that. And it's the same way with our dogs, where we're just, oh, you're such a nice puppy, and it just, praising him. That's not teaching him anything. When
Yeah.
he's doing what he knows he's supposed to do, and you're happy, the sheep are working, that's teaching him a lot more. So yeah, I think you're right on.
I think it's an individual thing, really, but I just find it's amazing for me to work with other people's dogs, and these dogs never forget me.
Mhm.
Very seldom do that. I mean, I might not see them for months, and they'll come running over to me, and I don't praise them. Don't get me wrong, it's not that I don't praise my dogs. I bet my dogs love me as much as anybody's dogs. And some of their dogs might love me as much as I love them. And I think it's because they get freedom and they get answers through the freedom. They correct themselves. I don't make the corrections. I don't make the, you know. So that's what builds respect to me.
Yeah.
Respect between humans or dogs or livestock.
Yeah. And there's some important life lessons there too, in that. It's the freedom to do what's right, and also for that dog, they're drawn to that place, like you were saying, where you're not necessarily praising him and fluffing him all up, but man, there's just, this is what they're supposed to be, sort of thing. So yeah.
It's just the same as a correction. What is a correction? If you can scare a dog just a little bit, that is a correction. It's enough. It's knowing how far to go.
Hmm.
You don't want to go too far. There's there's people that want to be in control at every move. And for me, that's too far. I don't want control. I, I want freedom on both sides.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's a good way to put it or not, but
No, yeah, I think it is. That brings up another question along that line that I think would be useful. Is what do you use for correction? Obviously, different people are going to use different things, but give us some examples of how you correct a dog.
mainly my voice. And I've seen. I mean, just through habit, I always carry a crook. We walked with a crook in Scotland all the time, and sometimes I'll just stop a dog with my stick or just anything to get their attention. That's all you need. You just need their attention, and then when you do break that contact, if a dog's misbehaving, and let's say it was Ben, and I said Ben, and I see him think that I'll take that. I don't need the answer. I take what I get.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people, if they said Ben lie down, Ben has to lie down.
yeah,
Or Ben go this way or that way. It has to be that way. I'm not like that with him. I don't want to be. I wouldn't like to work for someone that treated me that way because it would just be boring to me.
yeah,
That and it's just a preference, I guess.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and like what I use a lot is just their name, like you were saying, or just a hey,
Yeah.
and it's just, oh, what, it just gets their attention. But I thought that would be good to talk about it a little.
So when you're talking about that, I did a lot of clinics. The lady that started clinics in the United States was named Ethel Conrad, and I did 40 clinics, I believe, at her place. But I minded doing a clinic there once, and she had this little dog, and you could send it, it was a big little dog, it would go up, and when it got to the top, it would circle the sheep, it wouldn't stop. And it did it 2 or 3 times, and it was a kind of steep field, going down the hill and then right up. And it did it one time, and I remember running down that field, and I picked that dog up when I got up there, and I'm saying to it, if he said, come running up and down this hill, and I mean, my expression, it would be coming out, and that dog was going, "Oh," and I never touched it other than picking it up. And that lady swore that I did something because it never did it again.
Yeah.
It would always stop for me. Wait. It was that's just a mind-blowing thing for me. I mean, I didn't know that was going to happen. But when that dog did that, I was just giving myself to that dog, and that dog found its own answer. So that's the kind of correction I want my dog to get. I want my dog to be getting the correction and thinking. I don't want him to be that scared that he's being made do it, So I would say tone, and you've just got to be as firm as the dog needs.
Yeah.
I think
So
we
do you growl at your dogs?
Pardon?
Do you growl at your dog like, ah?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I use a lot of that. I mean, in a lot of tones, like, hey,
I think it's. I used to think it's funny.
I understand all that.
Yeah, exactly. I used to think it's funny how all these border collie guys would make this, hey, like growling sound kind of, and you I do it all the time. Don't even think about it anymore.
It just comes naturally once you start.
Right.
Well, that's for a minute, and then you'll get people will say, the quieter you are, the better the dog is, which I agree. But I want my dog to know me. I want him to know me because, if I get excited, I'm going to get excited. And, you want your dog to. So I try to let my dogs be free to judge me, much as I judge them. And that's why these dogs educate me, because I'm always watching. I'm always getting messages from them. They don't talk, but they can give me messages. When I was growing up, I grew up among a lot of tremendous sheep, and my brother-in-law was one of the best I ever knew. I mean, I don't know how he ever done it, but he knew sheep, and sheep knew him. And I think a lot of that has been passed on. And when I was growing up, I could never understand how some of the older people knew all these sheep. I just started looking at them, they knew them. And nowadays, I'm beginning to feel it. I can feel it now, but it takes time. But there's messages passed with animals to us if we will only look and learn.
Yeah.
Huge ones.
I think
So if I had a comment, Matt, about that we discussed earlier on tone of voice and how we give commands and whether dogs can pick up that emotion and stuff. Matt, you said that you were told whistles don't show emotion
and that makes them
and
better, is what I was
Ma-
told. Yeah.
makes them what?
It makes a whistle is a better command because there's no emotion in it, and everything I know now, that's
So I think that's true that there's no emotion in a whistle, but if you get frustrated with your dog, it will come through your tone of voice. And
Mm.
a border collie, most border collies want to please so much that they'll start trying harder when they know you're frustrated. And at a certain point, they'll get frustrated too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because
that's
of they can sense it in you, I think.
that's exactly what I was gonna bring up, is just you talked about frustration or anger, and I don't know about you guys, but my worst part comes out when things are not going how they should. So I think that's something we need to talk about is, yes, we want our dogs to know when we're frustrated, but we also have to learn how to it doesn't help us to get angry, you know? Like maybe that flock of sheep just blew through a fence and I gotta go get something else done. You might as well just roll with it and because like you said, Leon, if you get angry, that dog, boy, he's gonna feel that and he's gonna try so much harder and everything's just going south.
I was either going to try or quit. But
Exactly.
after,
Try or quit.
yeah, try or quit. If you get too angry, he could quit, or he could even get worse. But I tell my students all the time, I've been angry at dogs thousands and thousands of times. And I used to think, yeah, I'm better out there. But the more I think nowadays, they weren't better at all. I just thought they were better because I won.
Hmm.
I won the battle. So I don't believe that anymore, you see. I think that if we are angry, we should. If I'm out working my dogs and I get too angry, I'll go and put it back. I don't try to have that dog right before I put him away. Because I'm not being fair to the dog, I'm not even being fair to myself. I'm not thinking right. That's just my guide on it. And that's been time and, working with them.
Yeah. Unfortunately, dogs are very forgiving.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I mean,
They're way more forgiving than we are.
oh, no. I know. And, it's kind of amazing what a lot of dogs go through and what they give. But when you go back to praise, does a dog need praise or does he need love? What is love?
I was
Like
what's the difference there?
What's the difference between love and praise?
Yeah.
Well, there's feeling in love. There's no feeling in praise. You're making somebody have false feelings sometimes. If you're praising something that's no right, that's a falseness you're teaching.
So
If you love what you're doing and you love, when I did the book, it's funny, I never thought about this in my life. And to be honest with you, I never thought I would write a book. That was all just a freak. It was somebody that asked and never even considered it. And then it all happened. But, I think some of these things, the words, we don't think about a word and what it means. And I did when I did the book. But a lot of the books were thinking about words. And what does that word really mean? And when I think of love and what it means and how we use it, it can be twisted like any word. But anger, I can't find anything good in anger.
Yeah.
I mean, where does the good come out? The only good that comes out of anger is that the angry one gets away. But I would rather give somebody their way than be angry. I would feel better and myself about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it depends where people look at life, That's all.
Sure. Yeah, and like I said, that's a lot of what your book is about, is the philosophy behind training. And I think that's the key there. One other thing, and we're probably should be looking at wrapping it up here before too long, but one other thing I really wanted to talk about, um, was we talked about a little bit about biting. So if you have a dog that just he wants to fly in and grab a hold of the sheep, or I have a dog right now that whenever she gets in kind of a tight corners or whatever, her tendency is to want to bite or grip. And it's fair. But you had a you'd said something in your book about when you have a dog that's biting like that, you need to take out the fear. Um, how do we go about that?
Well, if I had a dog that was biting, before we go into that biting, I want to go back in one thing. Uh, We talked about the down on the dog. I don't want people to think I don't have a down on my dogs, because I do,
Mhm.
but I don't want the down to be a controlling factor. So going back to your question on what was it again?
On a dog that is biting because
Yeah.
he's
Well,
afraid.
if I had a dog biting, I would kick some sheep and I would take it up into a corner and I'd put it on that spot where it's on a bubble, whether it's going to run in and grab or stay back, and I'd just work patience.
Yeah.
Walk. If it's going, hey, 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 but don't get too hard on it. If you're asking it to get in that point, you can't jump all over the top of it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So, if you do it, you can take a dog, you can teach a dog. I think you can teach a dog or a person to change anything if you want, but it takes time and patience. That's the biggest thing. If you're going to do it and try to do it in a hurry, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, this dog I was talking about, when before I read your book, I just when I got this dog, she was a mess. I mean, she would just go into a flock of sheep and she'd just grab a hold of one and chase that one off and then go to the next and but we got her to where we could work her pretty good. But before I read your book, I was just kind of, well, this is the kind of the place where this dog's gonna be. We can use them. She's never gonna be great, and she may be still never gonna be great, but since I've got your book, I have been working with her more again, and just like you said, just, um, working her slower. I have been using more of a down command on her just because she gets so excited. So if I down her, now she can think and then she can balance because she has stock sense. She can work sheep really good until that switch flips in her head and everything goes out the window. So I found it helpful.
I think another thing that would help you in a dog like that is if it's like that, and you use your body right and open her up, like get her back off a sheep a little bit.
Hmm.
When they get into a certain point, they're past the pressure point, and that can cause that dog to get excited.
Hmm.
And if it's excited and maybe a little scared, then that's from the grip.
Yeah.
It's often fear that makes them grip rather than the other thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's slowing the mind down, I guess.
Yeah.
That's something that years back was very hard for me to wrap my mind around. When a trainer told me that usually a dog that grips is out of fear, but it's become very, very clear to me that it's
Yeah.
usually a lack of it's not guts and grit, it's
No,
It's fair.
they're just scared.
no.
It's like
Rubber bait dogs are basically scared.
it's a preservation, it's self-preservation kicking in almost, like
Yeah. Yeah, they're fine as long as someone's walking away, but when someone turns to face, it's and there's such a fine line because a lot of people think, well, when that one turns to face and to tell it to bite, it moves, but it'll only move so far. And before you know it, it might turn around and win that battle. You know, it. I don't think biting is. I don't know about other people, but I don't want my animals being bitten too much. I
Yeah.
don't think they need it. I think you can train an animal without that. So
You said something about allowing their mind to calm. That made me think about going back to a young puppy again. Before you're ever training him, working him on sheep. My very first border collie puppy I got, I would just have him. I was working on the farm full time, and I would just have this puppy out with me all the time. And this thing was a live wire, so it would just be, running here, there, and everywhere. And it's still that way today. I mean, it's hard to work sheep calmly with it because it's just wired. And somebody explained to me since then, like if you have a young puppy like that, they need time in their kennel to just rest, relax, calm their minds. Um, and I found that really helpful with my other dogs. But then when I read your book, I also learned something new, and that was you were talking about when you're out walking with your dogs, you don't let them just run all crazy here and there and everywhere. Um, I had been, but I've learned, with if they start doing that, like, hey, they settle down. They're so much nicer to be around. They're so much quieter. They can still run their energy off, but they're not just all crazy. So I don't know if you have anything to add in that. I found that really helpful.
I think it's something that a lot of people don't uh, realize, but a lot of people when they let their dogs out, it's like, go have fun.
Yeah.
Well, if you had a bunch of teenagers and send them downtown and say, go have fun too often, you might be in a mess. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And to me, it's, I want a dog to go out and be able to run if he wants. But if I say, Bill, I expect him to say what?
Mhm.
He doesn't have to do what I want, but he has to respect.
Mhm.
So we're back to that one word. I mean, I'm a huge on respect. It's no control.
Mhm.
It's if they respect and think, we'll find an answer. But I'm fair when it comes to finding that answer. I want their mind to have the same chance as my mind. So when you're walking your dogs, I mean, a lot of people are on the phone or they're, listen to music, or when I'm walking my dogs, I'm walking my dogs and I'm watching and I'm learning. My dogs learn me a lot when I'm walking, to be honest. And I'll notice a dog, it's changing. Like say I have a young dog and it's maybe a little bit wanting to run and chase, and uh, I'll just talk to the bed, and within not too long you'll see that dog want to walk with me.
Yeah.
He's already changed his mind. We're doing nothing. But if you don't give them that chance, you never get it. And when you have, like talking about your puppy, taking it with you, and it would be wired all the time, you see. It's just up there and that excited a little bit every time it goes out. So the mind can't, for me, the mind can't concentrate when it's up there.
Yeah.
It's like too much praise at the same time. Your dog's always excited.
Yep. Yep. And that's exactly what happened with that pup. I mean, he's just his mind over time just is wired now to always be that
Yeah.
excited. But yeah.
I remember seeing a puppy at a clinic in Wisconsin once, and this is a long time ago. And I really liked it. It was a pup I had sold, and I tried to buy it, and the guy wouldn't sell it. It was about 6 months old. And I didn't see that pup for about a year and a half. And then he brought it back to a clinic, and that dog was crazy. And you know what made it crazy? He had it chained in a barn, and there'd been swallows flying around, and it drove that dog completely crazy.
Yeah. Well, and actually, that was part of the story with that pup I was telling you about. We have a lot of swallows, so that thing would be loose, but it would be constantly running out of after the swallows as they're flying around and coming out of the barn, or if we're raking hay or whatever, that dog would be out there just chasing the swallows and getting all excited. But in your case, he was probably also frustrated because he couldn't. He was just tied there. Yeah.
So it's like a lot of people, especially clinics and things, when they're finished, they'll all go away and walk their dogs together.
Mm.
I don't like to do that. I want my dogs, because they get chased and learning things then, and um, I just think loyalty doesn't come through praise and excitement. Loyalty comes through the mind thinking, and it's back to another word,
And respect, probably?
and yeah, it just it's huge to me, and it gets bigger and the older I get. It means more to me, it's just, uh, and I think if you wanted to look at dog training, I know it works. I mean, it just, these dogs just can be so loyal. And
Mhm. Yeah. Well, Leon, do you have anything else? We could keep going.
Oh, I could go down a couple bunny trails, but
Um,
probably about time to wrap
we
up
will,
a good conversation.
yeah, we'll have to save it for another day. But Jack, do you have anything that you would like to plug? Are you still doing some clinics that people can attend? Do you have a website?
yeah, we're still doing clinics. I'm going to start doing more at home rather than traveling as much. Travel's getting to be a hustle bustle too much for me anymore. But I'm doing them at home and getting groups coming in, and so things like that. And there's, I've somebody working on a web page right now that we're going to just use to give content. I just want to help people, as far as I'm concerned, what I want to give to people, what the dogs have given to me, what life's given to me, it's pretty special. So I've enjoyed it and enjoyed talking to you guys. Sometimes I would like to see your operation if I was ever in that part of the country. But
You're always welcome.
yeah, well,
Always welcome. Is there any, you said you don't have a website. Is there any contact information that you would like to give out if people want to come to one of your clinics, or perhaps they can get a hold of us and we can,
what I can do, I'll have the girl that's doing the website thing
Mhm.
give me a contact. Maybe you could get out,
Yep, that would be great.
and she could maybe do something like that. And
Yep.
'cause I'm not into when it's communicating. I can talk like this, but when it comes to technical stuff,
Yeah.
uh, not too good.
Well, yeah, and for those listening, I know I said it earlier, but I want to say it again. I highly recommend Jack's book, Learning Life Lessons with Stock Dogs. Um, I bought mine off of Amazon. I'm sure there's other places you can get it too, but I would highly recommend the book.
They can get books for me too. I mean, I sell books, and a lot of people want them because they get them signed and thing. But I mean, it pretty same price, same,
Hmm.
and you're selling them in Amazon, and you don't make much money.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So if somebody wants to buy a book, we'll get some contact information here. And
Yeah. No, that's good.
yeah.
And
If if we
okay,
if you get that website up and running, we can put a link to that in the show notes.
well, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Jack. It was great chatting with you.
Well, it was good to chat with you guys, and I hope you got some information he wanted.
We definitely got something out of it.
Okay. Hopefully we'll meet someday.
Yep.
Talk to you again.
All right. Hey, that went well, Jack. Thank you.
Thanks again for listening, folks, to another episode of the Profitable Sheep and Goat Production Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Lost Creek Wholesale brings you a full line of sheep and goat handling and feeding equipment from Schumer Enterprises, as well as universal feeders and our own brand Ramquip. If you're looking for sheep and goat equipment or feeders, visit our website www.lostcreekwholesalellc.com. And remember, if you have a subject or question you'd like to see addressed on the podcast, feel free to shoot me an email to leon@lostcreekwholesale.net or give us a call at 717-310-3641. Select the option for podcast questions and go ahead and leave us a voicemail. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch up with you next time.